The second type of rule that was difficult to obey was the rules that'll get you into little trouble in 21st century America. Perhaps the clearest example of this is stoning adulterers. It's a big part of the Bible, so I figured I had to address it. So I was able to stone one adulterer. It happened, I was in the park, and I was dressed in my biblical clothing, so sandals and sort of a white robe. And, because again, the outer affects the inner. I wanted to see how dressing biblically affected my mind. And this man came up to me and he said, "Why are you dressed like that?" And I explained my project. And he said, "Well, I'm an adulterer. Are you going to stone me?" And I said, "Well, that would be great." And I took out a handful of stones from my pocket that I've been carrying around for weeks, hoping for just this interaction. And, they were pebbles. But he grabbed them out of my hand. He was actually an elderly man, mid-70s, just so you know. But he's still an adulterer and still quite angry. He grabbed them out of my hand and threw them at my face. And I felt that I could retaliate and throw one back at him. So that was my experience stoning. And it did allow me to talk about, in a more serious way, these big issues like how can the Bible be so barbaric in some places and yet so incredibly wise in others? How should we view the Bible? Should we view it, as original intent, like a sort of a Scalia version of the Bible? How is the Bible written? And actually, since this is a tech crowd, I talk in the book about how the Bible actually reminds me of the Wikipedia, because it has all of these authors and editors over hundreds of years, and it's sort of evolved. It's not a book that was written and came down from on high. So I thought I would end by telling you just a couple of the takeaway, the bigger lessons that I learned from my year. The first is, thou shalt not take the Bible literally. This became very, very clear early on, because if you do, then you end up acting like a crazy person and stoning adulterers. Or here's another example of, that's another. I did spend some time shepherding, so it's a very relaxing vocation. I recommend it. But this one is, the Bible says that you cannot touch women during certain times of the month. And more than that, you cannot sit on a seat where a menstruating woman has sat. And my wife thought this was very offensive, so she sat in every seat in our apartment, and I had to spend much of the year standing until I bought my own seat and carried around. So, I met with creationists. I went to the Creationist Museum, and these are the ultimate literalists. And it was fascinating because they were not stupid people at all. I would wager that their IQ is exactly the same as the average evolutionist. It's just that their faith is so strong in this literal interpretation of the Bible that they distort all the data to fit their model. And they go through these amazing mental gymnastics to accomplish this. And I will say, though, the museum is gorgeous. They really did a fantastic job. If you're ever in Kentucky, there's you can see a movie of the flood, and they have sprinklers in the ceiling that will sprinkle on you during the flood scenes. So whatever you think of creationism, and I think it's crazy, they did a great job. Another lesson is that thou shalt give thanks. And this one was a big lesson because I was giving these prayers of thanksgiving, which was odd for an agnostic. But I was saying thanks all the time, every day. And I started to change my perspective. And I started to realize the hundreds of little things that go right every day that I didn't even notice, that I took for granted, as opposed to focusing on the 3 or 4 that went wrong. So this is actually a key to happiness for me, is to just remember, when I came over here, the car didn't flip over, I didn't trip coming up the stairs. It's, a remarkable thing. Third, that thou shalt have reverence. This one was unexpected because I started the year as an agnostic, And by the end of the year, I became what a friend of mine calls a reverent agnostic, which I love. And I'm trying to start it as a movement, so if anyone wants to join. The basic idea is whether or not there's a God, there's something important and beautiful about the idea of sacredness, and that our rituals can be sacred, the Sabbath can be sacred. This was one of the great things about my year, was doing the Sabbath, because I am a workaholic. So having this one day where you cannot work, that changed my life. So this idea of sacredness, whether or not there's a God. Thou shalt not stereotype. This one happened because I spent a lot of time with various religious communities throughout America, because I wanted it to be more than about my journey. I wanted it to be about religion in America. So I spent time with evangelical Christians and Hasidic Jews and the Amish. I'm very proud because I think I'm the only person in America to out-Bible talk a Jehovah's Witness. After 3.5 hours, he looked at his watch. He's like, I gotta go. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Bless you. Bless you. So, but it was interesting because I had some very preconceived notions about, for instance, evangelical Christianity, and I found that it's such a wide and varied movement that it is difficult to make generalizations about it. There's a group I met with called the Red Letter Christians, and they focus on the red words in the Bible, which are the ones that Jesus spoke. That's how they printed them in the old Bibles. And their argument is that Jesus never talked about homosexuality. They have a pamphlet that says, here's what Jesus said about homosexuality. And you open it up and there's nothing in it. So they say Jesus did talk a lot about helping the outcasts, helping poor people. So this was very inspiring to me, and I recommend Jim Wallace and Tony Campolo. They're very inspiring leaders, even though I disagree with much of what they say. Also, thou shalt not disregard the irrational. This one was very unexpected because, I grew up with the scientific worldview, and what I was shocked was learning how much of my life is governed by irrational forces. And the thing is, if they're not harmful, they're not to be completely dismissed. Because I learned that I was doing all these rituals, these biblical rituals, separating my wool and linen. And I would ask these religious people, why? Why would the Bible possibly tell us to do this? Why would God care? And they said, we don't know, but it's just rituals, and that give us meaning. And I would say, but that's crazy. And they would say, well, what about you? You blow out candles on top of a birthday cake. If a guy from Mars came down and saw, here's one guy blowing candles out, the fire on top of a cake, versus another guy not wearing clothes of mixed fabrics, would the Martian say, oh, well, that guy, he makes sense, but that guy's crazy? So, no, I think that rituals are, by nature, irrational. So the key is to choose the right rituals, the ones that are not harmful. But rituals by themselves are not to be dismissed. And finally, I learned that thou shalt pick and choose. And this one I learned because I tried to follow everything in the Bible, and I failed miserably. Because you can't. You have to pick and choose. And anyone who follows the Bible is going to be picking and choosing. The key is to pick and choose the right parts. There's a phrase called cafeteria religion, and the fundamentalists will use it in a denigrating way. They'll say, it's just cafeteria religion, you're just picking and choosing. But my argument is, what's wrong with cafeterias? I've had some great meals at cafeterias. I've also had some meals that made me want to dry heave. So it's about choosing the parts of the Bible about compassion, about tolerance, about loving your neighbor, as opposed to the parts about homosexuality is a sin, or intolerance, or violence, which are very much in the Bible as well. So we have to, if we are to find any meaning in this book, then we have to really engage it and wrestle with it. And I thought I'd end just a couple more. There's me reading the Bible. That's how I hailed taxi cabs. Seriously. And it worked. And there was that was actually a rented sheep, so I had to return that in the morning. But it served well for a day. So anyway, thank you so much for letting me speak.